Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are so excited to have each of you here for the U.S. Small Business Administration, the SBA, webinar series, Invest in America, Small Business Tools and Resources. Today, we'll be celebrating Black Entrepreneurship Month while also uplifting business owners and leaders throughout the country, and also resources that you can utilize through recent legislation to help with your business in order to thrive in today's economy. I am so excited because these briefings highlight steps you could take now to learn and take advantage of existing programs, updates regarding programs and recent policy announcements, and then also a discussion of important and timely policy issues. Now I'm so excited and have the honor to introduce to you Tara Murray, who is the Special Assistant to the President and Deputy Director to the White House and Office of Public Engagement. Tara Murray is a justice defender, public advocate, and civil and human rights lawyer serving in the White House as a Special Assistant to the President and the Deputy Director of the Office of Public Engagement. Tara joined the Biden-Harris administration as the White House Fellow and worked in the Office of Cabinet Affairs, where she served as liaison between the White House and federal agencies. Prior to her government service, Tara ran her own law office in Washington, D.C. Her firm's focus on racial justice underscored her commitment to people and the communities most vulnerable to the unfair and inequitable treatment. Tara is adept at developing and nurturing strategic partnerships in the public, nonprofit, and government sectors to champion the rights of the most vulnerable. And without further ado, I present to you Tara.
Thanks so much, Renee, and hello, everyone. As Renee mentioned, my name is Tara Murray, and I'm Deputy Director of the White House Office of Public Engagement. Happy National Black Business Month. On behalf of President Biden and Vice President Harris, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join this important conversation, highlighting the Biden-Harris administration's demonstrated commitment to supporting and partnering with Black businesses, which is part of the Bidenomics plan to build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. Thank you to the team at SBA and to Public-Private Strategies Institute for convening this conversation and for your commitment to advancing the work to support Black businesses. SBA, under the leadership of Administrator Guzman, continues to be a catalyst within this administration as they lead implementation of the President's historic agenda for small businesses and economic partners across the country. You have an excellent lineup of representatives here to share about the tools and the resources designed to bolster your capacity to do business at new scale. From where I sit at the White House, we strive to engage core external stakeholders in a variety of capacities. We engage business leaders and entrepreneurs, small business leaders and innovators like yourselves, who can speak most directly to the economic reality and the needs of communities. Your engagement perspectives, your feedback allows us to accurately inform the decision makers here who are steering the large pieces of legislation that are responsible for many of the programs and initiatives that you're going to hear about on today's call. These include the American Rescue Plan, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. These are the bills that have been championed and made possible by the Biden-Harris administration that are driving billions of dollars into our communities, creating unprecedented economic opportunity for all communities, namely minorities and historically underserved groups. Our hope is that all of the good news wrapped up in these legislative announcements will bolster your efforts and your businesses on the ground while putting entirely new industries and opportunities on your radar screen as well. In Black Business Month, the Biden-Harris administration continues to recognize the significant contributions of Black entrepreneurs and businesses on our modern economy, while recognizing there is still much more left to be done to level the playing field. The President and the Vice President continue to assert that small businesses are the backbone of our nation's economy, as crucial threads of our community fabric that make up nearly 50% of jobs in the private sector. Our leaders know that to succeed in the modern American economy, businesses require steady and reliable access to capital and financial services. And we are committed to the work of advancing this access by leveling the playing field in the face of longstanding, disproportionate, systemic challenges that have restrained Black businesses, as well as the more recent active efforts and tactics by our opposition that are designed to limit this access, which we continue to not only closely monitor, but also to address as an administration. Many of you know that even today, Black-owned firms are 3 times less likely than white-owned firms to have their financing needs met. And of all U.S. venture investment, only 1% goes to Black-owned firms. For these reasons, we are taking a whole of government approach to ensure that equity is central to all of our implementation efforts. All of these priorities are reflected in the expansion of the SBA Community Advantage Program to benefit more mission-based lenders across the country, which you'll hear more about on today's call. It's reflected by the targeted work being done by the Minority Business Development Agency at the Department of Commerce, which was made permanent by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. It's reflected by the Treasury Department's $10 billion State Small Business Credit Initiative program, providing capital to early stage companies and Main Street small businesses in economically disadvantaged areas. And it's reflected by the groundbreaking public-private partnership initiatives, such as the Economic Opportunity Coalition that was announced last summer by the Vice President and involves more than 20 leading corporations investing money and resources to support minority-owned small businesses. As you are doing now, I want to encourage all of you in attendance today to continue engaging with our administration. We need to hear your voices and share with us all the ways that we can continue to support you. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time today, and I'll turn it back over to you, Renee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tara. And that was such great information. Now we're going to speak to Mr. Corley of the U.S. Small Business Administration. Mr. Corley has been selected to serve as the Deputy Chief of Staff for External Engagement in the Office of the Administrator at the U.S. Small Business Administration. In this role, Mr. Corley is responsible for providing advice, guidance, and assistance to the administrator and other key agency officials in multiple program areas related to external engagement. Mr. Corley most recently served as Senior Advisor for Public Engagement and Intergovernmental Affairs for the Presidential Inaugural Committee and served on the President Biden's campaign committee in many capacities. He has held the role of State Director in South Carolina for the primary cycle and Senior Advisor for the state of Michigan and Senior Advisor for the Southern region. In addition to his campaign work, he has served in the state and local government with the South Carolina Court System and the Department of Social Services. And with that, I present to you Mr. Corley.
Thank you, Renee. It's always a pleasure to join PPSI. We, of course, celebrate a good partnership and relationship as we talk to small businesses and those that aspire to be entrepreneurs. Happy Black Business Month. As we conclude the month, I want to thank a number of my colleagues, Mr. Ted James, who has really grabbed the bull by the horns and really taken off and engaging with a number of Black businesses in the region and around the country. Many of our 68 field offices have held celebrations and awareness and roundtables throughout the month. I recently visited Detroit, in which I engaged with members of the National Pan-Hellenic Council. Many of them that I engaged with were small business owners. Having listened to some of the challenges and successes, we still have a lot of work to do. But we really wanted to celebrate a number of the successes this month. Visited several small Black-owned businesses while in Detroit. The administrator has made it a priority, and I'm going to thank the administrator and certainly speak on her behalf right now, to make it a priority that we build equity into everything that we do. That includes her engagements, that includes outreach, and that includes making sure that we're educating, informing, and engaging everyone, but particularly this month, for Black-owned businesses. We make it a priority to build equity throughout the year. We don't wait till Black History Month. We don't wait till Black Business Month. We engage with everyone throughout the year. Certainly some of the challenges that we continue to meet and educate, inform, engage on government contracting has been a real issue, not issue, but a lot of awareness has been raised by Black businesses, how they can be involved in government contracting. So we continue to inform and educate there. I want to give a special shout out to our public engagement team for not only helping to pull this together, but making sure that our outreach and engagement is on point when it comes to equity and when it comes to Black-owned businesses and Black Business Month. So thank you, Renee. Thank you, PPSI. And on behalf of the administrator, I look forward to the rest of this webinar.
Thank you so much, Mr. Corley. And now we're going to hear from Shaylee Holloway, who is a senior advisor in the SBA's Office of Investment and Innovation. She is a senior advisor in this office where she's focused on the agency's portfolio of private investment programs, including the Small Business Investment Company, which is SBIC, Public-Private Partnership Program. Prior to joining the SBA, Shaylee served in a leadership role at Wayfair, an e-commerce company pioneering strategies to combat COVID-driven disruption by partnering with Wayfair's thousands of small business suppliers, and is an alumni of HelloFresh, IDEO, and JP Morgan. I now turn it over to Shaylee.
Thank you so much, Renee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you today. As Renee mentioned, I'm Shaylee. I'm a senior advisor in the SBA's Office of Investment and Innovation, and I have the honor to serve under our Associate Administrator, Bailey DeVries. So I wanted to take the opportunity here today to tell you a little bit about the Small Business Investment Company program, because I think it's one that you probably haven't heard of. And it's something, but it's quite a powerful program here at the SBA, and I think it's quite unique. It's one of the programs that we oversee in our Office of Investment and Innovation. So if we can move to the next slide, I'll share a little bit about it. So our office is responsible for stimulating and supplementing the flow of private equity capital and long-term loan funds, which of course all small businesses need for the financing of their growth and expansion. So what is an SBIC? That's like a mouthful, right? They're private market investment funds. They're licensed and they're regulated by the SBA. So one thing that's kind of unique about this program, and something that I always need to be sure to explain, is that we're actually, the SBA isn't investing directly into small businesses, but rather we are partnering with fund managers, like private equity and venture capital fund managers, that are providing a capital match with a government guarantee, which then improves the risk return profile of those investments and encourages those managers to then invest in small businesses and startups that they might not have otherwise. So if we flip to the next slide, one of the things that I love to brag about our program is that it actually costs $0 to the taxpayer. So the funds that our program commits to the licensed SBICs are actually borrowed with the guarantee of the full faith and credit of the US government. Today, our program has a little over 300 funds in its portfolio, with a total of $40 billion in assets under management. To give you a little bit of a sense of the scope of the program, this past year, those 300 SBICs, those funds, invested in over 1,500 companies, which created and sustained over 103,000 US jobs. And I think one of the things we are very proud of in our program is the rich history of the program. It was started during the Eisenhower administration, and over our program's history, funds that have been licensed by the SBA, these SBIC funds, have actually invested in some companies that you definitely know of. You see them here on the bottom of the screen: Apple, Intel, FedEx, Tesla, Whole Foods. We're really proud of the long history of the program and some of the amazing companies that it has seeded and it has invested in. So how does the program work? If we flip to the next slide. So the way that I'm going to lay it out like very in very simple terms, because I think sometimes it can feel very like overwhelming and inaccessible to talk about private equity and venture capital. So the way that it works is if you're a fund manager, if you're someone who maybe you're a venture capitalist, you're an investor, you'll come to the SBA and you'll say, hey, I have raised, let's say, $50 million in private capital. And I would like a license to operate an SBIC, which is just it's a fund. And then the SBA does a bunch of diligence, and you go through a very rigorous vetting process. And if at the end of it, you qualify for all of the program's criteria, the SBA will say, great, yes, we will give you a license to operate, and we will also commit up to 2 times the private capital that you've raised. So in this case, you've raised $50 million in private capital from your investors. The SBA will contribute another 100, 2 times that 50, in the form of a loan to your fund. And so you'll have that $150 million fund. You receive a license from the SBA, and you're regulated by the SBA. And then you have a mandate to go out and invest that $150 million into small businesses. But we do have a lot of work. This is a Small Business Administration. The purpose of this program is to stimulate and supplement the flow of private capital to small businesses. So we do have requirements around the types of investments that funds can make. So if we flip to the next slide, you'll see some of those requirements there. So small business investment companies, these funds, must invest at least 75% of their total capital in small businesses. Types of small businesses that you cannot invest in are small businesses that are working in real estate or farmland, financial intermediaries, things like that. So there are also restrictions on the types of industries those small businesses can invest in. So that's a little bit about how the program has worked in the past. But if we flip to the next slide, I'm really excited to be able to share with you today some modernizations to the program that we have recently announced in a final rule that just went into effect 2 weeks ago, which is called the SBIC Diversification and Growth Rule. And I hope everyone feels bad for me that I have to say that 100 times a day. It's a real mouthful, but really, this regulation came about as we sort of took a step back to assess the program. As we looked at the program, the SBIC program, one of the things that we found is that we really only had one financial instrument, which is that loan to the fund that the fund has to pay back with semi-annual interest payments. So you have that $100 million loan, you need to start paying it back twice a year. And the problem with that is that there are only certain investment strategies that really makes sense for. One of them is called a private credit strategy. The problem there is that funds that take on that loan from the SBA that requires semi-annual interest payments, they're really only a fit. They're going to be incented to invest in small businesses that are throwing off a lot of cash, right? More mature small businesses that are very profitable because they need those funds to then pay back the loan. So it really isn't a better fit for investing in earlier stage small businesses that might not be very revenue generating now, but could be in the future. And the types of strategies that align with that investment in small businesses are what you hear as venture capital. Really what that means is just investing in earlier stage small business. And the important thing here that I really want to stress is that the data shows that in terms of the types of investment strategies that are being launched by people of color and women, it is more of that earlier stage investing in the smallest of small businesses that might just be ideas or theories or prototypes, but they really need that capital to be able to grow. So those are strategies that align better, like venture capital. Growth capital is what we need to be opening up our program to, because today it's really not a good fit for that. And that's exactly what we've done with this investment diversification and growth rule. So 3 things I want to call out about this rule, if we flip to the next slide. 3 key benefits. So the first thing that we've done is we've introduced a new financial instrument, which we call the accrual debenture, another mouthful. But really, that financial instrument aligns better with the cash flows of earlier stage and longer duration investment strategies. So that original loan product that I talked about when I was describing the program, that requires semi-annual interest payments, right? The accrual debenture, those interest payments are due at the end of the life cycle of the fund, which means that it's a better fit, that financial instrument, for that earlier stage, longer duration investing that we know that women and people of color are gravitating towards. We believe that those strategies are a great fit for this accrual SBIC. So that's the first thing that we're doing. The second thing that we're doing is that we're reducing barriers to entry for the program. So we're just making it a little bit easier, a little more accessible to get a license from the program. We still have our very stringent licensing and due diligence standards, but we're broadening out the program to invite in more fund managers and broadening out what it means to have, what the track record that we're assessing and the eligibility requirements, because we want to bring in a more diversified group of investment teams. Now, the final thing I want to call out here, the third way that we're opening up the program to make it a better fit for a wider variety of diverse fund managers that are then in turn investing in diverse small business owners, is by also enabling the program to provide capital to fund of funds. So a fund of funds is another example of an investment strategy that we think could be a really great fit for this accrual debenture financial instruments. So they are in a position to provide financing to micro or emerging managers or first-time funds that, quite frankly, might not have wanted to apply for the SBIC program because they might not have the appetite to work with a federally regulated program, but they might want to learn from a partner that's investing in the fund. So the way that this works is that $100 million example I gave earlier, that would actually be provided to a fund of funds manager that then makes investments not in small businesses, but to other funds that are managed by managers that are focusing on underserved communities. And so this is just another example of how we really believe that we can improve capital access for more diverse founders and the changes that we're making to do that. So that's a bit about the program. And with that, I'll turn it back to Renee.
Well, thank you, Shaylee. Well, now we're going to actually have a panel discussion, and we're going to bring in Anthony Gaddy, who is a co-founder and president and CEO of the Upstate New York Black Chamber of Commerce, the Upstate New York affiliate for Washington, D.C. based U.S. Black Chambers. This was founded in August of 2018. The Upstate New York Black Chamber of Commerce based in Albany and represents the Upstate New York region, including the Capital Region, Central New York, Western New York, and Hudson Valley region on behalf of Black businesses and underserved communities. And I believe the Region 6 Administrator, Ted James of the SBA was on. I know he's having some technical difficulties. So if he's able to join the conversation, we'll be happy. And Region 6 of the SBA oversees Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Oklahoma. And if he's able to join us again, we'll be so glad to have him. But want to start with you first, Mr. Anthony. Thank you so much for joining us. Your work with the Upstate New York Black Chamber of Commerce has been instrumental in advocating for Black businesses in underserved communities. Could you share a specific, excuse me, I'm tongue-tied today, success story or initiative that showcases how your organization's efforts have directly contributed to the growth and resilience of Black entrepreneurs in the Upstate New York region?
Sure. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the honor of being here representing Upstate New York Black Chamber and of course, U.S. Black Chambers. It's really hard to pick one, but I think one of the things we're most proud of here in terms of representing what our first pillar of services and advocacy is the work we've been able to do here in New York State, along with the New York State Legislature and specifically the Division of Minority Women in Business Development to assist our members in becoming MWBE certified. That process has always historically been cumbersome, frustrating, but we decided to take an approach of, instead of just focusing on the application process, we went about establishing a relationship directly with Empire State Development, with New York State, and with the Division of Minority Women in Business Development, so that our members would have direct access and contact when their applications were in the process of becoming certified. So recently, we've had a lot of success with some of our members, such as Goodby Controls. Clean Environmental Solutions is now getting contracts with New York State Thruway. And so that's probably one of the things that we're most proud of here in the Upstate New York Black Chamber.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you.
Yes. And Shaylee, the SBIC program is amazing. And to your point, I know I just recently learned, as you know, we've been doing work together with the SBA about the SBIC program. So I want to dive into more about that. And so I know there's plenty of Black founders who are historically faced with barriers in accessing investment or capital for their businesses or startup. How are the recent reforms with the SBIC program working to remove those barriers for access to capital?
Yeah, I love that question, Renee, because the removing barriers of access to capital is exactly what motivated these program reforms that Administrator Guzman has spearheaded. So there are two things that we know. One is that investors who are people of color are gravitating towards longer duration, equity-oriented investment strategies. So that's like venture capital. We also know that diverse allocators are more likely to invest in minority-owned startups and small businesses. That's why it's so important to open up the investment community to more diverse allocators, investors, and because that is really how we've seen historically capital flowing to those historically underserved communities. Now, there's a whole other issue here, right? Which is that these like historically entrenched investors also need to be allocating capital towards a whole host of diverse small businesses, which historically, again, statistically, we have not seen. So what do we do to incent the flow of capital to these earlier stage small businesses that are started by diverse founders, right? What we do is we provide capital and an incentive for those fund managers who are using equity-oriented strategies to then invest in diverse small business owners. So we are aligning the program to better fit with those strategies that Black investors are gravitating towards that earlier stage. And then moreover, we are licensing those fund-to-funds SBICs that have a specific mandate to invest in historically underserved small business owners and emerging managers, right? Because we also want to incent the flow of capital to diverse managers who are new to the investment industry because they have historically been shut out for structural and cultural reasons, right? And so those are really the two ways that we're getting at solving the problem of both capital flowing to more diverse fund managers, diverse investors, and also there's more capital flowing to more diverse small business owners.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad that you guys are making those investments to ensure that these communities are uplifted and providing more access. So thank you and the administrator for making sure that's being done. And it looks like Mr. James, the administrator for Region 6 is here with us via phone. So thank you, administrator, for joining us.
Thank you.
We got a quick question for you. I know you're in and out because of technical difficulties, but if you're able to hear us, let us know. And I'm going to pitch this question to you. You have such amazing passion for impacting lives and transforming communities, and it's so inspiring. In your role as the Region 6 administrator, could you share on some examples of how the SBA programs or even initiatives that has had a notable or positive effect on Black entrepreneurs in the South Central region? And then more specifically, how do you see these efforts contributing to the broader economic inclusivity?
Yeah, so thank you for having me, and I apologize for the technical difficulties on my end. But there are so many programs that highlight our equity agenda, two that stand out, making our community advantage lending product permanent. That helps our mission-based lenders. The data shows us those lenders are 2 and 3 times more likely to invest in Black entrepreneurs. So that process and product deploys capital into communities that many call underrepresented. I don't subscribe to underrepresented anymore. I describe those communities as underestimated. So when you are intentional about investing in underestimated communities through the entrepreneurs that come from those communities, I think that's how we get to a more inclusive economic environment, because of course, once you infuse that capital, that capital infusion likely stays in that community. Through our work with our National Panhellenic Council MOU that we signed, where we're working with the millions of members through those 9 historic organizations. We're talking more about the SBA's and this administration's intentionality about ensuring that Black and brown entrepreneurs take advantage of the federal government procurement process. And when you allow those entrepreneurs in underestimated communities the opportunity to take advantage of the federal government procurement opportunities, of course, that allows those entrepreneurs to scale. Those entrepreneurs are then allowed to create more jobs, and it continues the cycle, because those Black entrepreneurs that start as subs, through our intentionality in making sure that we're opening up the process, those subs become primes. And then they bring more subs on and create more jobs and more opportunities to scale to those entrepreneurs in those underestimated communities.
Thank you for that, sir. And I love the framing of underestimated communities instead of underrepresented. So thank you for that language change too. And now we're going to go to Mr. Gaddy again. Representing Black businesses across various regions, you have a unique perspective on the challenges that they face specifically. What are some of the most significant obstacles you've encountered, and what collaborative strategies or resources have proven effective in addressing those challenges and promoting economic empowerment for those business owners?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that question. Historically speaking, access to capital has always been our number one challenge. One of the things that we've learned since we launched the organization was that a lot of our business owners in our community in general doesn't really have a strong relationship with banks. We do banking, but we have really not focused on establishing banking relationships. So when we talk about access to capital, the direct perspective we think of most often is, actually getting to the capital. But we've learned that through establishing better banking relationships, that's where you start to go about investing that time that leads to the information, that leads to the capital. So we've been working really closely with many of our banks, including serving on advisory councils for one larger bank and one community bank as well, to assist them in establishing relationships in our communities with our business owners, also focusing on home ownership as a priority, as a way to build generational wealth, as I believe Mr. James referenced about that circulation of the dollar within the community. If you don't have a mindset of approaching it that way and building relationships so that you know who you're going to be speaking with when you walk into the bank that you've probably been banking at for years, but have never really stopped to take the time to learn more about the people who make the decisions around lending. So we've been really intentional about working in that aspect. And also during COVID, we were very active, even though we were very early on in our existence, with understanding that a lot of the resources were coming in through the municipalities. So we were very active in working with the city's COVID task force, making sure that information not only was made available, but it was also made accessible. And there are subtle nuances between that, because not all demographics receive their information in the same way. So you have to be very mindful and intentional about making sure that resources that are available are also made accessible. So we were very active in that regard to the point where during COVID, banks were contacting us to identify people who could apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. So that was something where we really found some value in being a resource in our business community.
Wow, thank you. And that's super impactful, because I know there are so many businesses without the due diligence of your chamber would not have the ability to be standing and thriving today without your help. So thank you for all the work that you guys do.
Thank you.
Yes, Shaylee, question for you again, because I know the involvement in the private investment programs like SBIC. What advice would you offer our business owners who are listening today, who are seeking financial support for their ventures, like Mr. Gaddy was speaking about, right? Are there particular trends or shifts or investment patterns that entrepreneurs should be aware of as they are navigating funding options, or particular options that they should be looking towards, or particular banks or opportunities that are out there that they should be just acknowledging or noticing more so?
Yeah, that's such an important question, Renee, because I could not agree more wholeheartedly with Anthony and with Ted around just how important access to capital is. And I think the main message that I have here is that the SBA really does have flexible tools as you're navigating the entire life cycle of your business. And I think sometimes it can feel very almost overwhelming once you start to learn about all of the different SBA programs. And so I'll share with you my mental model about how I think about the SBA's different capital access programs. So if you're starting a small business and you have an idea and you want to move something into a prototype, for example. So let's say for a startup that is creating maybe a new technology. If you want to move something from an idea to more of a prototype, I think the SBIR and STTR programs is a really great fit. So that's non-diluted capital. Those are grants that come from 11 government agencies to help support the development of your technology. So if you're someone who's developing not so much like a Main Street small business, but maybe you're developing a new tech product, like that could be a really great option for you. But let's say you're creating a Main Street small business, or you're one of those, like you have this really great idea for an app and you want to move it from a prototype to a product. That's where I think investment capital is really important. And that's where the Small Business Investment Company, the SBIC program that I talked about, comes in. So that's the program whereby small business owners can get investment capital from funds that are licensed as SBICs. And one thing that's very important for me to share is that for funds that are taking investment capital, we have modified these, in my opinion, very antiquated and backwards rules that had historically prevented funds or small businesses that are taking on that investment capital from SBICs to then seek government contracts. So that's one of the really great things about the SBIC program, is that if you get investment capital from an SBIC, you are still considered a small business and you're still eligible for government contracts and government loan programs that are focused on small business. So those small business set-asides. Then finally, if you're moving from a product that you're trying to scale, that's where those 7A and those 504 working capital loans from our Office of Capital Access come in so important. Those are very broad and flexible programs that provide that more credit capital that you need if you're trying to grow your small business. So I hope that that's helpful, because I know that when I joined the SBA, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that there are so many incredible programs. And I think PPSI does a phenomenal job highlighting all of the SBA programs. But I think sometimes it's helpful to organize them in your mind of like, when might this program be a good fit for me? And that's the model that I use.
No, that's super helpful. And also practical to like, oh, okay, if I'm in this industry, this may be more aligned for me versus that industry. So thank you for that breakdown. Administrator James, having grown up valuing service and community, what advice would you give to Black entrepreneurs seeking to give back to their community while building successful businesses? And more specifically, how can community engagement be integrated into an entrepreneur's journey for more holistic impact?
You know, I think that it is so important for an entrepreneur to always be centered on just a spirit of service. You know, of course, you know, I caution entrepreneurs and I tell them, yes, you are a business, but there are different ways. An administrator, she talks to us about, as an agency, being as entrepreneurial as the businesses that we're serving. And I say that to entrepreneurs, and I stress that you have to meet people where they are. I always encourage entrepreneurs to always be very embedded in two places, in the church and in the school, and always go out and offer those internships and those opportunities for young people to learn about entrepreneurship. I think that when you look at the small business boom that we've undergone in the last 2 years, we know that young people are more thinking about being the employer versus the employee. So I think that as a part of your entrepreneurship journey, we are duty bound to talk to the young people about not only the successes, but the challenges of entrepreneurship, so that they understand those financial tools very early on, so they are not reliving some of the mistakes of my generation and the generation before ours. And I think that when you are integrating that community engagement and you're showing up in different places and supporting, you know, your church, if you're out there and you are a caterer, you know, I'm volunteering some of my services to that church anniversary, right? That high school football game, I'm going to the football coach and I'm going to ask him who's providing the pre or post game lunch for your football team. You know, I'm going to, if I'm a printer and I have you know, I'm printing cups and T-shirts, you know, I am asking that football coach or that basketball coach, you know, who's making the T-shirts for your team as they travel. I'll donate those for to put my logo on the back and then show up and be the official vendor of that team. And all of those things are service minded, but it also helps that entrepreneur grow in that community and continue, you know, as Anthony said, to keep those dollars into a community, and you're showing that you're not just there to make business, to make money, but you're there to provide a service for a community. And I think that entrepreneurs that are service-minded, they will see that tenfold by the way that the community will respond and support them financially.
Wow, thank you so much. I want to thank you all. Well, actually, I'm going to ask one last question. We have a couple more minutes, and we're going to put a plug out there. There are some resource slides that we're going to make sure that everyone has who has registered for this webinar. So it's going to include information about SBIC. It's going to include Investing in America. So the IRA, bill, CHIPS, all of those things, Medicaid, so that you all know about these additional resources for your business. But I wanted to just continue this quick conversation because I feel like this is amazing. And I feel like there's such a wealth of knowledge with you all here. One last question before we wrap up for all three of you. If there's one piece of information that you would like to give to a business owner today, what would that piece of information be? I'll start with you, Anthony.
Bring it down to one information. And I'm going to kind of continue along the path that Mr. James was walking down in terms of how do we better engage with our community. So I would encourage business owners to engage with their community and look at building your business around building relationships and focus more on the transitions as opposed to just the transactions. One of the things that we've been doing recently is doing, as Mr. James said, more community events. So we've been supporting community events such as the Albany Center Gallery. There's more ways to gather your members and your business owners in these types of settings where you're also supporting your community, but you're also gathering members in a way and business owners in a way that they get to build relationships on each other with each other. So I would encourage business owners not so much to just focus on your business, but focus on the people that define your business, between your customers and your clients, your staff, your leadership. Make sure that you focus on people connecting, because people do business with people they like, they know, and they trust. And if you focus on those aspects of development, your business will thrive.
Great piece. Shaylee.
Yeah, I think the one thing, if I had to share one thing about the SBA with this audience, I think I would direct you to Lender Match, which I actually just put in response to one of the questions here. I think it was the question from Sherry James. I responded with a link. For those small business owners on the line who are looking for funding, who are looking for loan capital, you can check out Lender Match, which is the SBA's tool to help match you with a lender for those 7A loan programs. So check it out. Maybe it is a good fit for your small business. Maybe it isn't, but it's a really powerful tool, and it's I think it's our most popular program here at the SBA.
Again, great resource. And then Administrator James.
Yeah, I think both great advice. One of the things that, for me and my role at the SBA, we have so many phenomenal programs, but I believe that my sweet spot has been on the procurement side. And especially in communities of color, I see this way too often. My advice would be, don't be afraid of the partnerships. Don't be afraid to recognize that especially going after those opportunities, don't try to fit into a box that does not align with your expertise, but don't be shy about aligning yourself with other businesses in your community where you can partner to go after different procurement opportunities, be it federal, state, or local. Like I know that entrepreneurs look at their businesses as their babies. And for me, I'm not just sending my 6-year-old to anybody because she's my baby, but I'm always aligning myself with other parents that we can do play dates with, or that we can do activities with that I trust. So I think that we have to start not being so afraid to lend some elements of our babies in terms of our businesses with other like-minded, aligned business owners in seeking those opportunities for procurement, because they allow you to scale and, again, recycle those dollars in those underestimated communities and keep them close to home.
Thank you for that. That makes sense. We want to make sure that everybody is part of the network, and sometimes your network is a little bit bigger than you think. You just have to be imaginative and be supportive. Anthony, I see your hand is up. You have one more thing to say before we close out.
Yes, I just wanted to add a couple of additional resources that I think might be helpful to our business owners. One is that we're honored to be a part of the SBA Community Navigator pilot program, and so I encourage business owners to reach out to us, to engage with us as a community navigator, since we're speaking so much about community. And one last resource I feel is very important is to have our businesses certified. And we have a Buy Black certification platform that I think is going to be really essential in terms of how we go about building our Black business community throughout the country, not just here in upstate New York. So I wanted to share those resources before we closed out.
No, those are very important resources, and we truly appreciate all the amazing hard work that you guys are doing, not only in New York, but throughout the country through the Chamber of Commerce Network. Want to thank all of our dynamic, amazing, and powerful speakers today, Tara, Shaylee, Anthony, Administrator James, for being here, and also the amazing Kendall Corley of the SBA as well. Thank you all so much for your time and being here. And again, there are additional resources that we did not get to go over, but you will receive it as part of a package with the video of today's conversation, so you can replay and hear all these amazing resources for your businesses to thrive. And there'll be additional ones where you can click on links and see how you can use those for your business potentially as well. If you have any SBA related questions, please use the email link below, answerdesk@sba.gov. And if you have questions and would like to see a copy of this webinar and you did not register for this webinar, go ahead and email us at events@publicprivatestrategies.com. And with that, we bid you adieu, and we will see you at our next webinar in September at the end of the month, the last Thursday of the month at 2 p.m. And with that, thank you again so much for joining us today, and we will see you at the end of September. Cheers.
Thank you.